morning. Thank you again. Hey. Good morning. Is there somebody there? Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I hear you. You just coughed. I heard you again. Hello, hello, hello. This is Robert Frank. And this is April the 6th, Saturday. And we're going to be reading from Biscalia's Born for Love. So, if everybody's ready, we'll start this show on the road. The first one we're going to start with is called Affection and Love. Ours is one of the few societies where physical contact, even in family and with friends, is not encouraged or celebrated. Yeah. In our large Italian family, not to hug and kiss would be considered punishable behavior. Science has proven that a simple hug is one of the most convenient and inexpensive therapies available. Yet we remain touch-starved. In a study I did from my book, Loving Each Other, respondents mentioned three qualities which they considered essential for happy, long-lasting relationships. It was rather surprising to find that affection, touching and holding or stroking, was named most important by the majority of the respondents, second only to communication. Sex, on the other hand, which they separate from affection, was regulated to eighth position. Affection, non-sexual touching, is a tremendous resource of both physical and emotional well-being and essential to growth in love. It is free. You need no special equipment, and it is always available. To love, we must let people know we care. The best way is to literally reach out and show them as often as possible. There is a quote by Everett Cowley: "Loving touch makes the difference. Without mom's chicken soup, without Mom Teresa, without loving touch of our neighbor in church or a caress in the hospital, we might as well live like animals." Are you there, Sandy? I presume you're there.
I'm here, but I can't get my earphones to work, so I'm going to mute you, and I'll talk to you later.
Oh, all right. But you're going to hang around, right?
Yes.
Because I can hear you now.
Okay.
All right. The one thing that I crossed my mind as I read this is it's one of the things that maybe everybody should read every day, only because our government and our society seems to be leaning away from affection and touching and trying to treat it as if it was some kind of a crime. Which on one hand I find is kind of sad.
Yeah.
So we'll just take a moment to... How's things been going? Good at all? Yeah, I can hear you still having trouble. Well, in that case, I'm just going to continue on. The next one is called Rigidity and Love. Learning is a wonderful thing. We are, for the most part, freer and happier because of it. But while learning can liberate, it can also entrap. We acquire our basic system of beliefs and values early in life. These old mindsets can invalidate new perceptions and perpetuate useless stereotypes. One of the stunning rewards of loving someone is that he or she can help us to see things in new ways by challenging our beliefs and behaviors. Love invites us to broaden our perspectives by allowing us to see the world through the eyes of another. We miss the point when we see this challenge as a threat to our integrity rather than an exciting source for our growth. There is a quote by Pierre Telhan de Chadlin: love alone is capable of uniting living beings in such a way as to complete and fulfill them, for it alone takes them and joins them by what is deepest in themselves. Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you. Bless you. Not right now, rascal. You already went outside. The next one I'm going to go ahead and read because it's really short. It's called Love is Earned. The more we attempt to demand love, the more it eludes us. No pleading, promising, bartering, cajoling, or threatening can secure love. True love will only be given when it is earned. Quote below by Percy Bysshe Shelley: love withers under constraint. Its very essential is liberty. It is compatible neither with obedience, jealousy, nor fear. It is most pure, perfect, and unlimited, where its votaries, V-O-T-A-R-I-E-S, live in confidence, equally and reserved. Kind of interesting how some of these are really short.
Yeah, that's just a few words.
Yeah, it didn't say much, but I guess if you, as we say, contemplated about it, not much more you can say. It's right, straight point, and very true.
Yeah. Not much room for discussion.
Well, it does remind me of the one that I learned when I was a kid. You can spend all day chasing a butterfly, but in the real world, if you'll sit down and be very patient and wait, the butterfly will come to you and land on your shoulder.
Yeah, true.
And that is very, very true. I hear you sneezing and all. I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're not worse than you were.
No, it just started. I must be allergic to you, Robert.
Wow, through the internet. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Long distance.
As one might say, there's more going on here than meets the eye. Holy cow. Rascal, I can't pick you up right now.
Uh-huh.
I love little dogs, but sometimes It's like what I'm reading. He's so demanding, he thinks he can just demand and demand and demand, and he's going to get what he wants.
Want your attention.
Oh, well. You just have to be patient and wait there, little guy. Anyway, the next one. The next one is called Ego as a Barrier to Love. Most of us think we are lovers, but few of us ever get outside of ourselves long enough to know what that truly means. To love means to move the focus from us to others and set as our major goal helping them to realize their God-given potential. In their success, we find pride. In their growth, we find satisfaction. In their increased knowledge, we are wiser by being able to share it. Through relinquishing our egos from time to time, we move closer to others and to an understanding of love. Quote by Lucille Harper. Sounds like it could be a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
One nice thing about egotists, they don't talk about other people. How that is true. How do you do? I know a few like that. Sad to say. And again, I hope I'm not one of them. Although at times I suppose I am. It's very difficult to get away from ego.
Yeah. And now we have the me generation, so you know, plenty of them.
Oh, ain't that the truth? They're running rampant. And unfortunately, that's goes pretty much against what everything the Bible teaches.
That's right.
And you know, there again,
Well,
what
I have found, you know, like in network marketing, that you know people want to help. You know, Mike Lyles was one of those people that I just wanted to mentor and help everybody.
Okay, hold on a second. Yeah. Never mind. I don't need to talk to you. Well, I am doing this webinar thing. Oh, I forgot. Okay, goodbye. All right, let me see you. Someone else looking for attention. As you were saying, I'm sorry, we were interrupted.
Reverend Dave is like that too. You know, it sounds like you are from conversations. So, I mean, you're doing what you can to help others. Wonderful, really.
Yeah, you know, and unfortunately, the truth of that is, I know we've all heard it, but it's the cliche: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I remember in Amway, I've told this story many times, but I'll tell it again. I had one, I'll call it a family, but I worked mostly with the guy because he seemed to be most interested, although his wife helped him quite a bit. And, you know, he was buying his products and I was helping him, and I helped him for 6 solid straight months, go to talk to people. I got several people underneath him, and I showed him what to do and showed him how to do it. And just went right on down the line. And then what surprised me the most was one day I said to him, I said, I'm not being cruel or mean, but, at some point I have to, in a sense, not completely, but in a sense, I have to cut you loose and move on to the next one. And he seemed to understand what I said. And so I moseyed on down the road and moved on to the next person that I was working with and helping. And lo and behold, he fell right through the floor. The minute I let go of him,
Oh my God.
he was helpless. He could not do it on his own. And, it taught me a lesson, unfortunately. There are a lot of people out there that if you're not holding their hand, so to speak, 24/7, they're lost. They just don't seem to have the capacity to do it on their own, even after you've taught them everything that they need to know to do it on their own. So it's a funny world.
So people find that with their kids, they're supposed to train them to fly out of the nest. And some little eagles don't want to fly out of the nest. They want to hang on to mommy and daddy forever.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of that could be, fear. And sometimes I guess it's hard to explain, especially to children sometimes, that fear is just a very natural part of life that you got to get used to, because if you don't, you'll never do anything.
But I mean, it sounds like you built this guy a good network, and he, could have done very well, and just throws it all away.
Well, I actually was in the same situation that you'd mentioned before. I ended up with a divorce with my ex-wife at that time, my wife at that time. And when going through the divorce and everything else, why, literally everything else just went right down the tubes with it. It's very difficult to try to do two things at once. You can't be running a business and then going through a divorce and losing your wife and your family and your house. And, they get everything and you get nothing, and it's a struggle. That's all. I'm not complaining, that's for sure, because that's the lessons we all learn in life, I think. I believe we've all been down that road one time or another.
Yeah, definitely.
I know in my lifetime there's probably only 3 or 4 people that I know of, that I know personally, that have gotten married and they're still married, and they've only been married once.
It's rare, for sure.
Yeah, that's the whole gist of it. It is rare. And, who really knows why? I often say it's a lack of education, but lack of education is not necessarily always the correct statement, because, as we both already said here, we're dealing with ego. And some of the smartest people in the world have egos that are just blown so far out of sight that they might be rich and famous, but they're poor, sad, and lonely people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, To the next one. Next one is called Looking at Love. We may have 20/20 vision, but few of us ever bother to use it. I received a letter from a woman who wrote, "I don't think my husband has really looked at me for the last 15 years. We're seldom apart, yet I think I could come into a room stark naked on a white horse with my hair on fire, and he'd go right on watching TV or reading the paper. It's not that he doesn't love me. It's just that I've become the invisible woman." When I was teaching love class, I would say to my students, "You'd live with your mother for over 20 years. What color are her eyes?" Amazingly, few could answer the question with any degree of certainty. We miss seeing our children as they grow up. People we love die. And a few weeks later, we have great difficulties picturing them. I recall speaking to a large conference of blind and partially sighted people. After my talk, one of the participants came up to me and asked if she could braille me. With soft, caring fingers, she surveyed my face as her eyes could not do. When she finished, she smiled in a most delightful manner and said, "How nice." A very large part of communication is nonverbal. When words deceive and eyesight fails, it's good to remember that we perceive love fully through all of our senses. The quote is an anonymous quote that says, "There are none so blind as they who will not see." Excuse me. Another good one.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that's why I like this book. They're all good. It'd be very hard to pick one out and say, "Well, that was the best one." No, they're all quite good because they're all, how should I say, hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It, in some cases, what he's writing, I believe, we all know, without a doubt. I think we all know. It's just we never think about it.
Take it for granted.
You just hit the nail on the head. We take it for granted. How very, very sad that is very true. Well, real quick, I'm just going to mention we're going into another segment. I guess you could call it a chapter. We can call it anything we want, as long as we don't call it late for dinner, right? The only lasting trauma is the one we suffer without positive change. That's what the next segment is called. Have you ever known a blind person? Or I mean, have you ever had that happen to you. I've only had it happen to me once.
Yeah.
The blind girl that I knew, and she did what he just read.
I've never had that done, but I have known blind people.
Yeah, it is, I have to admit, a very strange feeling to have somebody take their hands and just, and you've got to be extremely patient because they're very, what would be the word, methodical.
Oh, yeah.
And very slow in what they do because, they're registering your face through their fingertips. And I can't even imagine what that might be like. I have thought about if I could find me a willing participant that I would try it myself, close my eyes.
Yeah.
And then, take my hands over somebody's face and see if I could actually picture their face, with my fingertips.
Yeah.
But I think in order for that to work, you'd have to do it where somebody you could meet and have them go to a room. You don't get to see them. They would just go to a room, and then you blindfold yourself and go into the room so that you have no preconditioned idea of what this person looks like.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because if you go into a room and you know what they look like, then that wouldn't work very well.
Yeah, it's kind of fruitless. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you went into the room blindfolded and you've never met this person and then tried to do the same thing, then it would be highly interesting because when you left the room, you could sit down and make some notes, how thick were their eyebrows, how wide was the forehead, were the cheeks puffy or indented, what kind of chin bone did they have? You could write those things down and then try to picture an imaginary face of what you've written down there, and then try to picture that face and what you think it might look like, and then go into the room without the blindfold and see how close you are.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Of course, now I know, like myself, I come up with the idea. I may never do it. And on the other hand, maybe I might one day, who knows, but I just have a feeling that most people probably wouldn't do that. They'd think to themselves, well, that's kind of stupid. Why would I want to do that? And the only reason I can think of would be, it would be like anything else in life. It would be a different experience.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll jump on to the next one. The next one is called A Time for Joy. It's strange how we seem determined to keep a record of the bad things in life while so readily forgetting the good. In love class, I made it an assignment that each student share a peak experience of despair and a peak experience of joy. It was bewildering to me how easily people related their despair, often in detail, and how difficult it was for them to recall joyous times. Perhaps it is not so astonishing when we think of how our lives are bombarded with news of devastation and hopelessness. The history that we all studied in school is almost exclusively a chronicle of wars, oppressions, famine, and catastrophes. There is little record of happiness, and peace. Mama used to encourage us to collect as many memories of happiness as we could. She assured us that they would come in handy during the times when things were not going so well. And she practiced what she preached. When hard times struck, she would remind us that there were happier days ahead. She also had a wonderful talent of turning painful experiences into positive ones. One occasion comes instantly to mind. Papa informed us one evening that his business partner had ab- absconded, absconded,
Yeah.
astounded, I guess, with their funds,
Yeah.
leaving him bankrupt and deeply in debt. Of course, our whole family was distressed by this news. How would we pay our bills? Where would we get our next meal? The following evening, Mama answered that last question. She prepared the most elaborate feast we had seen in months. Papa was furious. Have
Uh-huh.
you gone crazy? He angrily demanded. No, Mama replied. I just thought it was a perfect time for a celebration. This is when we need to be happy the most. We'll survive, and survive we did. In addition to a practical lesson, Mama also gave us all a beautiful memory which has served us well over these past many years. No one in our family will ever forget that dinner. Keep a record of the times you've triumphed over misfortune. It will assure you that you can do it again. Remember your moments of joy and happiness. They will serve as a reservoir of strength when you most need it. Know that there are always causes for celebration in the best of times. But perhaps more importantly, also remember in the worst of times. Now, there is a short quote by Lynn Caro that says, learn to laugh at your troubles, and you'll never run out of things to laugh at. That was something I guess we should think about. I never have.
Sounds like his mother was a wise woman.
It sure does. Sounds like he was very fortunate.
Yep.
Not all of us have that kind of background.
Well, you focus on your trouble, you're believing that really
Yep,
that Satan's more powerful than God. That
yep.
kind of puts it in perspective when you start feeling sorry for yourself, thinking there's no way out. There's always a way out. God always, always makes a way out.
Yeah, and he even says so in the Bible.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly how to say it word for word, but basically it says um, that no matter what, I will never make it so bad that you can't
Right.
survive it.
Right. And
I mean, I'm not I'm not like a lot of people. I've read the Bible probably more than once, 3 or 4 times, maybe more. And I've never been good at the quote part, you know.
Well,
I
it's
do.
hard for me to remember the reference. I remember the scripture, but telling you where to find it and the exact verse is very hard for me. I can't remember the reference.
Yeah, I can't do that either. And a lot of times I can't even remember the verse very well, but I can remember the concept. And to me, the concept is just as important as the verse itself.
Because it shows you understood it. But a
Yeah,
perfect example of focusing on Jesus in the midst of the storm is Peter walking on the water. Once he took his focus off Jesus, he was drowning.
yeah.
You need to focus on Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so much of it really pertains to the Bible, even though he specifically doesn't really mention it anywhere. But because I met him in person, I know that he was a very religious type person, you know.
Mm.
It's all right, Rascal. It's just the neighbor dog. You can bark at him if you want. He's a good boy. You're doing your job. You're a good boy. You're doing your job. Papa's proud of you. You know how to do your job right. Yes, you do. What would I do without you, huh? Yeah. Nothing like having an animal.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go on to the next one. And I think you're enjoying these quite a bit.
Yes, they're very, very good, very on target.
All right, let's go to the next one. The next one is, it is impossible to solve our problems while remaining the same person who brought them on. No person or relationship is free of problems. When they do occur, it is well to remember that we ourselves are responsible for them, at least in part. We may even have been their source. When we continue to approach our conflicts in the same old ways, we drift further from the possibilities of a permanent solution. We simply continue to drudge on our personal treadmills, going nowhere, solving nothing. Ideally, overcoming conflicts is all about adding new insights and acquiring new skills. When we approach obstacles as opportunities for making ourselves over, we not only find solutions, but we immeasurably enhance our general problem solving abilities as well. Quote beneath by Frank A. Clark: the next best thing to solving a problem is finding some humor in it. Holy cow. As I read that, I think to myself, maybe because of my ego, how difficult that would be. Only because I think to myself, if I'm in a groove, how does one, as they put it, you've heard the saying, think outside the box.
Mhm.
How does one who is in the groove get out of the groove? Because you're not going to make any changes at all until you get out of the groove and realize, whether you know it or not, you're trying to solve the same problem with the same math, so to speak.
And that's the description of insanity.
Yeah. And somehow you have to find a new equation,
Yep.
a different math problem.
Yep.
Because if you don't, and you keep trying to solve that same problem with the old math, like he just said, you're going to go around and round and round and round. And I still picture in my mind, maybe it's just me. Maybe this particular one is my problem. How does one actually remove themselves from that groove to see or look upon it differently than what you are in the habit of looking at? Am I making any sense? I sound like I'm not.
I mean,
Huh?
once you snap yourself out of it and realize you need to come at it from a different direction, you know, but you've heard it say, well, what you're doing is not working. Why don't you try it my way? You know, I mean, it's just basic that most people keep trying to do the same thing to solve the problem. It's obviously not working. So you need to think about doing something different.
Yeah, it does. I'll have to bring this up because it just popped in my mind. It reminds me of a joke that I heard at an AA meeting one time, and I almost laughed till I cried at the first time I heard it. This guy tells a story about a guy who runs out and gets hit by a car. Of course, he went to the hospital, and he was in the hospital a couple of weeks, and they, fixed him up. He got out of the hospital. He wasn't out of the hospital but 3 or 4 days, and he ran out in front of a bus and got hit by a bus. And, of course, he went to the hospital, same old thing. He was there for a few weeks. They fixed him up, blah, blah, blah. And he got out. About a week later, he ran out in front of a motorcycle and got ran over and ended up in the hospital. Went through the same thing. As he's telling this, he looks out at the audience. He says, now let me ask you a question. Would you think that this person was crazy? And of course, everybody raised their hands and said, hell yeah, he's nuttier than a fruitcake. And then he said something that just gave me chills. He says, really? Stop and think for a minute. Now we're in an AA meeting, okay? Stop and think for a minute. Every single one of you in this room is that person.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, does that hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
How many times you went out, swore to God, stack of Bibles as high as you can. I ain't never going to go out drink. I'm not going to touch another drop
Mm-hmm.
and be drunk the next day. Yep. Now, when I look at it from that perspective, I can understand a little easier about how it is necessary to get out of that groove. But at the same time, I also realized that when I finally did go to AA and stop drinking, that in its essence was getting out of that groove. But that was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
That was no easy feat at all. But now it makes me understand a little better what he's saying here makes a whole lot more sense. Well, looks like maybe we got enough time to read one more. Now that one I'll have to say I really like that one.
Mm-hmm.
For today, which I'm trying to live in the now, for today, that particular one is at the top of my list for today. All right, the next one called RAPT, RAP. App? What is RAPT?
I guess, well, when you're enraptured by something, you're very involved and dedicated to it. But
Yeah, I understand RAP, but I've never seen RAPT.
I guess RAPT is being like kind of interested, very involved.
Well, it'll probably make more sense when I read the whole sentence.
Read it, right?
Yeah. Wrap attention as the message of love. A student of my love class once told me that there were times when she felt that the entire world was deaf to the sound of her voice. I get no response. I speak, and I end up feeling that I'm talking to myself. Am I going mad? I assured her that she was not, and that she was also not the only one who felt this. Most of us have experienced the emptiness that comes from feeling turned out. Listening is an art of love, or at a more basic level, an act of simple consideration. All communication requires two basic things: a speaking voice and a listening ear. This sounds pretty simple, but it's not. Most of us are very selective listeners, tuning in and tuning out as our interest dictates. With all the extravagance, noise, and worthless static that bombards us daily, this skill can be a blessing. It is something else, however, when we find ourselves turning out those we say we love. Over the years, as attention fades, as more distractions intrude, and voices grow dimmer, a deep ear is too often turned to the ones who most need it to be heard. And then, as so often happens, when we realize that we're done and try to turn back in, it's too late. The quote below by Diogenes: "We have two ears and only one tongue in order that we may hear more and speak less." That I've heard 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But the first part of it explains why I've heard it so much. Yeah, he just literally really gets in depth into this. This book should be a bestseller again and again and again. I think this is a book I would read more than once.
Yeah. Well, it's about, the quote you just read about having two ears and one mouth. It's good that you've heard it before, but are you really hearing it? A lot of people would read that and think, "Oh, that's cute." Never think a thing of it again. It's just, you need to keep it in mind, when somebody's telling you something and all you're thinking about is your answer. You're not listening.
Amen. How true that is. Well, you know, in sales, because we're basically both in sales. Uh, it's not easy to do what they just suggested to do because unfortunately we've been trained to think that we have to lay the platform out so you know what I'm talking about. When in the real world, maybe what we should be doing is asking some questions to see if we can get some kind of answers up front, like, have you ever been in business? Or have you ever wanted to be? Question. Now, obviously, if the answer says hell no, then you could very politely say, well, I can relate to that. Um, by the way, how's your kids doing?
Mhm.
You know, because they've already told you they're not interested right up the front. If you were listening, you got it right there.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can move on. And maybe at the end you say, well, I got to run, but, you know, if that question that I ask you ever enters your mind and you decide maybe that would be something you'd like to do, then give them your card.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Leave the door open, but you don't have to kick it down.
Yeah, never kick the door down.
Yeah.
But ask the question so you know right up front. And probably 9 out of 10 times you're going to get that negative answer. And I think that sometimes that's probably a lot more practical and more logical approach. You've
Yeah.
already got your answer, so just make it pleasant talk, blah, blah, blah. You know, the moon was out last night. I hear your dog barking in the car. It doesn't make any difference what it is. And so, oh, then before you go, that you know, you leave that door open. By the way, if you ever do happen to think about it, or even better, if you know somebody, a friend of yours has been looking for that kind of an opportunity, here's my card. Right? Wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, if you're like me, going out and doing it is the next step.
Yeah.
That's not, you know, knowing what you should do and going to do it is two different things.
Right.
How well I know. Anyway, I see our time is fleeting like crazy and we got to
So,
hang the meeting up. And I hope you get better. I hope you get over those
yeah.
sneezes and
Ah,
hope you're not getting another cold for God's sakes.
no, they're beginning to think it's allergies. The allergies are terrible here. Everybody up home is complaining in North Carolina. Sounds like the Texas pollen is just as bad. So they're thinking it might be allergies now. But the cold's gone, but now the allergies are gonna
Well,
rise.
now, where you're at, do they have a lot of cactus and bushes and stuff like that, like they do up here, out
Oh,
there?
but I know there's a big pollen problem.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, they've been talking about that. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Wow. Well, anyway, you won't see me till Tuesday.
Okay,
If
I'll
you
see
know,
you then. Have a great weekend, and God bless you, Robert.
I
Talk
want to try to have a good weekend, and you too have a good
to
time and get over the allergies for crying out loud.
Okay. Talk to you soon. God bless.
All right, you have a great one. God bless.
Bye bye now.
Bye bye.